Greetings, netizens of YouTube. This one is just going to be a brief video on the bombings in Belgium, the reaction to it, and some thoughts worth consideration. I had one or two PMs asking me for my opinion, so thought I'd take the opportunity. Obviously, it goes without saying that the Belgian bombing is tragic and is to be condemned, and that type of butchery is unconscionable. It is equally sad that platitudes such as those appear necessary. Heartbreaking though it is to see pictures of the missing, I am far more keen in understanding and preventing these tragedies rather than showing that I'm capable of empathy or of being suspected of harbouring potentially regressive viewpoints. Thus far, the death toll stands at 34 with over 200 injuries. There appears to have been 4 bombs, 3 at Brussels main airport, one of which didn't detonate, and 1 at Brussels metro or subway station. 4 men have been named so far as suspects. The El Bakraoui brothers are 2 of them, and they died in the blasts as suicide bombers. Najim Latraoui remains at large. The mastermind of this particular campaign was Moroccan-born Khalid Zerkani. Details are still emerging, but it's clear that with the exception of Zerkani, all named suspects were Belgian citizens. They weren't a bunch of migrant Muslim fanatics who had crept into the country. This terrorism was homegrown. We know the brothers had previously been involved in crime for carjackings and illegal ownership of weapons and attempted robbery. This, of course, brings issues related to multiculturalism back to the fore, but right now it's hard to make pertinent comments about the lives or upbringings of the men involved, as we don't have detailed information. In this type of case, this seems particularly relevant when people want to blame devotion to religious piety causing young men to carry out acts of terrorism. When it just so happens that said terrorist bomber is a criminal, lives in poverty, is unemployed, etc., this certainly doesn't mitigate the horror of the crimes committed, but it should remind all of us that part of the answer in reducing the numbers of these atrocities is for states to offer their citizens opportunities to lead productive lives. What I can say is that the moment I heard analysts from the mainstream media chime in with comments claiming that this was a case of ISIS wanting to show that they were down but not out, or that they were still strong, I knew it to be hyperbolic headline nonsense. It doesn't take a security expert to understand that since one of the Paris bombers, Salah Abdeslam, was arrested in Brussels only days earlier, the remains of a terrorist cell will strike with what they have left before the opportunity passes, as the net was finally closing in upon them. This attack had nothing to do with bravado, as the media initially claimed, and everything to do with terrorist logic. Some reports now claim that the group intended to attack a nuclear facility. It also seems to me that the Belgian police have been highly incompetent and laboriously slow to deal with this terrorist threat. I would be surprised if heads didn't roll, and if some new anti-terrorist unit is established. Finally, the reaction which we are all familiar with by now. The real-world scenes of grief, public disbelief, and fear. Online, the solidarity is mixed in with rage and bigotry and the creation of hashtags. I'm not one that doesn't believe in the effectiveness of certain types of online activism, but truly fail to see the point in every outrage or tragedy of this type getting a new hashtag where people don't even begin to touch upon the real issues. And then that hashtag is forgotten within a few days, as people move on to something else. What is the point in joining such supposed efforts when these types of short-lived hashtags have no real-world value whatever, beyond making those that use them feel like they did something useful, when in fact they did nothing of the kind but make themselves feel better? It's also important to remember that it seems to be only our Western victims that we are interested in commemorating. We are less interested in commemorating the hundreds of civilian victims of drone strikes carried out by our governments on a regular basis, or of the unfortunate victims of collateral damage in the various wars the UK, the US and numerous other nation-states have been involved in over the past number of decades. Where is our grief for those victims? People don't seem to be able to comprehend the senselessness of it all. But what they really need to do is to look at the whole picture. Until they do so, their sadness, misery and anger will only be exploited by politicians and those peddling a simplistic understanding of the world's problems. Meanwhile, the cycle of violence will continue.